Hey, what's going on, guys? gdoggcasey here with another healing video for the Astrologian. Welcome to the Tam-Tara Deepcroft. This is the second dungeon in line here. It's also a tutorial dungeon as far as I'm concerned, and it's very, very simple. And there's not really going to be a lot of mechanics I can really go over, but we're going to do our best here, and we're just going to get through the dungeon. Say hello to the team. And I forgot to set up my... Shit, I forgot to set this up again, so we're going to move this over here. We are going to be without casting for a little while. I need to stop doing that. So that's something you definitely want to not take part in, is come over here and start melee attacking things. I do have this healing spell I could do, though, if I need to. And I might need to, actually, to be honest. So these guys are laughing at, or they're thinking that I'm terrible right now. We're going to go ahead and cast this heal on him. And then we're going to cast Protect on the party. And then we're going to come back here and we're going to switch Cleric Stance back in there. We're going to be on another cooldown. But we should be okay. We'll survive. Alright, so healing. So in the last episode, I spent most of my time talking about stance dancing and how it's an important skill to master because it's something that is going to allow you to be more useful to your party, right? So when you have Cleric Stance on, you basically have turned on your I'm doing damage switch, and it makes your heals much weaker. You'll notice here, I'm going to heal him, and it only healed for about 105. But if I take Cleric Stance off, and if I try to heal again, it's going to heal for much more. This time, healing for 218, so basically double, right? But in the early dungeons, the tanks don't typically tend to take a lot of damage, so we can spend a little bit more time spreading our AoE attacks around. And usually what I'll do is I'll spread a Combust on each mob, and then I'll turn off Cleric Stance and I'll heal the tank to full, and then I'll put Cleric Stance back on and just start using my, my normal nuke here, the Malefic spell. And by the time we are done with these mobs, the tank should still have a decent amount of health left. I'll cast it one more time, and then turn off Cleric Stance and throw a quick heal on. There we go. And now to get ready for the next fight, we can start with Cleric Stance on, because typically these things don't tend to do a lot of damage early on. So even right here, we can just focus on DPSing. Now I'll turn off Cleric Stance, throw a heal on the tank so he's ready to go for the next fight. So it's pretty simple stuff, and I mean, every job role you do early on is going to be a simple start here. So there's not really too much I can really teach you guys other than just do as I do to the best of your ability. Now, I mentioned in the last episode, some people are strongly against healers doing damage. I think that in Final Fantasy XIV, that's an opinion I do not share. I think that you should do whatever you can to help your team out in any aspect. And there's no point in standing around doing nothing or overhealing when you could be doing damage and helping the team get through the dungeon just a little bit quicker. Now, another thing that the healers can do is in certain dungeons there will be like side objectives, like you need to pull this lever, or you need to pick up this key, or anything like that. And the healer can take that role on as well, because we would much rather have the DPSing and getting that damage in, where, obviously our damage is okay, but the DPS damage is going to be better, right? So we let them keep doing their job, we let the tank keep doing his job or her job, and we go around and do all like the other things, like picking up whatever. Now in these early dungeons, that's really not going to come up too often, but you'll get the idea once we get to some of those. Now that very well might switch later on, because there's going to be some dungeons where the boss or the enemies you're fighting do so much damage that the healer cannot take a break from healing. And if the healer were to take a break, then all of a sudden you might find the tank in a pretty scary situation. So that's something that you'll want to, you know, keep in mind. Alright, I'm just going to do a quick adjustment to the sound here. It's just seeming really loud. It doesn't, you know what, I'm going to turn that down a little bit more. I'm going to turn that down a little bit more. Maybe to 15 or 14, whatever. That should be okay. It's just feeling pretty loud in my headphones. If that's been the case for you guys, I really apologize. Hopefully it's better now. So we're going to spread our combust around. We're going to turn off Cleric Stance, select the tank, and then just start healing. Now we'll put our Cleric Stance back on and just go to doing damage. Our combust lasts for a decent amount of time. 18 seconds, so you typically don't need to reapply combust, but you can if you want to, if you find yourself in a situation where, you know, it might be worthwhile. So far, though, it's not necessarily worthwhile, so we'll pop a heal, and we'll keep going. Alright, turn on Cleric Stance, start spreading out that combust. I don't even know if this is worth doing, spreading it out, or maybe just focusing on one mob is a little bit better. Okay, so our tank is taking damage, so we're gonna quickly get him up to full health here. See, now this goes back to what I was saying before, where some people will say that this method of healing is dangerous because you're more likely to let your tank die. So now everyone's taking damage, so I'm gonna just come over here, pop an AoE heal, and we'll just do a little bit of focusing on healing. You really have to gauge the situation. So the threat is all over the place here. So I'm going to turn off Cleric Stance, go back to healing here. Now, one very, very important thing to remember as a healer is if you pull threat, do not run away from the tank. Actually, do the exact opposite. You'll notice me sometimes. Now, I have a skill here called Luminiferous Aether, which allows me to shed off some threat. So you'll notice me using that from time to time. But if you pull a mob, what you should do is just go run right on top of the tank and just stand right with him. And he should be able to use like either a flash or an overpower, something that will allow him to pull the threat off of you. If you run from the tank, all you're doing is making the fight very disorganized. So do not do that. Alright. Go back to healing. There we go. Go back to healing damage. See, our combust is still going on this enemy, so no reason to use it. And there we go. So we shall keep going. I did receive that comment, by the way, about the cancel sound when you keep spamming like this. I forgot to look into it, though, so I apologize. I will look into that. I realize, like, for me, I just sort of don't pay attention to it, but as a viewer, you guys probably hear that all the time, so I really apologize. In fact, maybe I can find it. If we can find a quick moment of respite. Okay, I was dealing damage there without having Cleric Stance on, so that was a mistake. This guy does a little bit too much damage for me to just completely ignore and go digging into the sound settings. So we'll get the tank back up. Alright, and then I'm going to quickly look here. System. It's probably not even in here. It's probably one of those things that's in, like, character configuration. No idea. No idea. I'm not going to find it in this episode, so sorry about that. If you know exactly where it is, definitely let me know, just in case I forget to look it up after, because I tend to do that. But now that you guys have brought it up, I keep hearing it, so maybe I won't forget. Alright, cleric stance on, go back to doing damage. Go. These little fights, usually you don't need to do too much healing. So we're just going to DPS all the way till now. And now we have another enemy joining the fight, so good timing to pop a quick heal. Don't forget, you have other abilities too. The one thing about the Astrologian is they have lots of different abilities that they could use to help their healing. One of them, which I don't use very often, is called Light Speed. And it's pretty cool because you can cast it, and then it makes all of your spells instant cast for a little bit less potency. So you can like just spam your DPS on them as well. But not only that, the best use of it, which I cannot do now because I let the cooldown run out, but the best use of it, I find, is to run around spamming Helios, your AoE heal, because it takes away the cooldown and it allows you to move around while casting it. So you can literally run in circles just spamming AoE heals, which can be helpful for certain situations. And this is another one of those, like, you know, during the tanking series, I felt maybe it was a little bit easier for me to just talk through my rotation and, you know, show you guys what I'm talking about by doing. In this one, for some reason, it just seems like a little bit more complicated because there's really not all that much going on. I don't mean complicated, sorry, a little bit tougher to sort of talk about what I'm doing because there's really not that much you have to do. I think healing the early level dungeons is a lot easier than tanking it because there's just less things that you need to know about. But if you guys have any questions, anything that it seems like I am glossing over because to me it's really simple, or you know, it's just a basic thing that I did not think about talking about, but you guys have questions about it, let me know in the comments. That's what this is for. Well, actually, scratch that. I'm not going to say this is a guide. Remember, I've had several conversations about how I'm not calling this a guide anymore, but there are people who may use it as a guide. And those people, if you have questions, let me know and I'll do my best to answer for you. But I will never pretend to be the expert here. I'm just good enough to make it through, and a lot of you guys are okay with that, so I am okay with that as well. But you're getting the sort of gist here, the pattern as to how I am approaching these, you know, these pulls. Basically, have cleric stance on, spread my combust around. I think I just pulled another enemy there. Make sure they all get it. Turn off cleric stance, heal up the tank. I'll even use the super heal here, and then turn cleric stance back on, and then just start going to town with Malefic. Just deal as much damage as possible, keeping an eye on people's health, of course. So for this one, we might actually have to grab a quick heal, or give the tank a quick heal. Actually, no, we won't even have to do that. There we go. My headset's starting to die. I can't tell if... I don't know if you guys can hear that in the recording. Probably not. I think it's only me that can hear it. It's beeping at me, letting me know that it's almost dead. Alright, cleric stance. We're almost done this dungeon anyway. So this is probably the hardest fight in the whole dungeon just because there's 4 mobs. So we can see here that we're getting dangerously close to letting the tank dying. So we're going to quickly... Oh, that thing's on cooldown too. Shit, we're going to let the tank die. Alright. So, that was a mistake. Very, very bad mistake. So now, that was a result of me worrying about my headset, talking, and trying to squeeze a little bit too much damage out, and that was totally my fault. And that is where the people who are on the other side saying that you should focus only on doing healing are going to have a point. But we're going to be okay here. I'm gonna use Luminous Aether as well to try to drop some threat off. And we'll just focus on healing here. That's a little embarrassing that I let that happen, to be honest. But it's a good example of something that can happen when you try to do a little bit too much. I was trying to spread the... Combust to everybody, and I felt like I can squeeze one more out, and I failed. So let's go ahead and raise. And we'll take ownership for that mistake as well. I'll even say try to squeeze out a bit too much damage. Oh, I don't even have... Ah, shit. No protect. I'm not gonna cause another... he probably expects it, though, doesn't he? So, yeah, that's another... you know, in case you guys missed it at the beginning, you can swap out your additional skills, but it just takes... a little, you know, it gives you like a 30-second cooldown, so. Now, the goal is to never let that happen again. I'm going to just call it an example. I did that so that you guys can see an example of what can happen when you try to force out a little bit too much damage. And I thought I had this on cooldown, or I thought it was available, but it was still on cooldown. So, now we are going to... switch back to cleric stance, and we're on cooldown again for a little bit, but I'm gonna watch a cutscene anyway, so it'll buy us some extra time. Oh shit, we still have this fight to do though, eh? Okay. Alright. I do have my super heal off cooldown, so let the tank go for it. The longer he waits though, to be honest, the happier I am. Alright, go tank. So here, again, we're going to throw Combust. We're not going to let it affect us too badly, but we're not going to get too overzealous. So already I'm going to start healing here. And these guys die relatively easily, so they don't necessarily need my DPS here. But we'll do it a little bit anyway. There we go. Should be able to start throwing on some more Combust. There we go. Honestly, I'm a bit flustered that I let that happen. So I apologize for showing you guys a little bit of bad play there. But I am going to lean a little more heavily than I should on the fact that it's a great example of what not to do. And what to, you know, to try to figure out what your limits are in terms of how much damage can I do and when should I stop. Make sure you know that you have your, you know, make sure you know when certain important abilities are on cooldown, because right there, that's basically what did it. I did not even know, I thought I had that spell available, and you know what, even if I didn't have it available, or even if I did, it would have been a little bit too close anyway, so there you go. But yeah, the goal for this series is now not to ever let anybody die, unless they do it themselves. So this boss is relatively simple. We're just going to DPS until we feel like we need to heal. Which I say when he gets into about the 300s, that's about when we want to heal. We'll let the DPS take care of... someone doesn't know. Oh, there we go. Alright, he's now no longer invulnerable, so we will throw another Combust on and go back to DPSing. And go back to healing. Alright, we pulled Threat, so we're going to use Luminous Aether, I mean. And almost instantly we lost the Threat, so it's a very useful skill. Let's throw Combust on things. Turn off Cleric Stance, go back to healing. Turn it back on, go back to DPSing. Turn it off and go back to healing because he might end up pulling quite a few mobs on him, so he's going to need a little bit of extra healing. We'll come stand by him because we pulled Threat on one of the mobs. See how easily he was able to grab it back? Okay, so now we're going to go back to DPSing a little bit here. Go back to healing. And that should be all the healing we have to do for the rest of this dungeon as we wipe this guy off the face of the earth. Okay. And there we go. We did it. It is a very easy dungeon, and even so, you can see when you get a little bit overzealous with the DPSing, you can let the tank die. So it's something that you basically just have to work out. And, you know, the more you heal and the more different styles of tanks that you play with, the better you will start to be able to gauge those situations. Like, you know, I'll be honest, the tank took a little bit more damage than I expected at the time. But I still got the 2-player combinations anyway, so I guess people were okay with it. But yeah, it's one of those things where, you know, the more you do it, you'll start to gauge, and from the beginning of the dungeon till about the halfway point, you'll understand, okay, this tank takes like this amount of damage, so I need to know that I need to start healing once I see him at around this percentage of health. You know, usually it's about the halfway mark. If you're a little bit worried about it, you can go a little bit higher than halfway, maybe like 60 to 70%, throw out a heal, but you'll do whatever you're most comfortable with. And in the end, and this is the same thing that I said at the beginning of the tanking series. You know, at the beginning of the tanking series, I said, your job is to make sure everything is hitting you, and that's your job. That's all you have to worry about. Well, at the beginning of a healing series, or of this healing series, if you're a beginner healer, then your job is to make sure that nobody dies. If you're not DPSing because it's a little bit too much for you and you want to just make sure that you're getting all the healing done, fine. You can't, no one is really going to argue with you except for some people who are a little bit, you know, over the top, a little, who like confronting people who are trying to learn the game. You know, your job description is healer, so your job is to not let somebody die. But once you get past the newbie feeling of it all, and you start to feel like you want to contribute more to your team, then there are other ways you can do that. But it's a balancing act. And right there, you saw me with a lapse of judgment, and it failed. And I'm sort of like, I'm leaning really heavily on what happened there, mostly because I feel bad that I let it happen. To be honest, it's not even really a big deal. I was able to res them up. And later on, once we level up and we can use things like Swift Cast and Ascend in battle, you know, we'll be able to fix those mistakes much quicker. But that's all I'm saying. You know, if you're a beginner, focus more on the healing. That's totally fine. But the best way to sort of start to play optimally is to start trying to fit damage in there and just not let anyone die while doing it. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed. I apologize that I'm harping a little too heavily on myself there, but you know, you guys get to see it in action. We're not all perfect, and sometimes I make mistakes during my dungeons, and that was an instance of that. So I hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next one.